Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take all the research, the books, the notes, and just distill it all down into the knowledge you need, and fast.
And today we are tackling something, well, something pretty fundamental. It really sits at the foundation of any kind of personal change.
It really does. And we're kind of challenging the classic advice, the advice that almost every self-help book seems to rely on.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're diving into the engine room of reality, frankly. For decades, the mantra has always been, you become what you want, or, if you just work hard enough, you'll get there.
Right. The assumption is always that desire and willpower, the sheer effort, those are the keys.
Mm-hmm. The keys to massive change. But it doesn't always work out that way, does it?
Exactly. And, if you just look around, desire is everywhere. It's universal.
Yeah.
But successful, lasting change, that's not so common. Everyone wants to be healthy, wealthy, happy.
But very few manage to actually sustain it.
And here's where it gets really interesting, according to the sources we've been digging into. That whole belief system, it's fundamentally incomplete. It's missing the main operating system.
And the real truth, the thing that actually runs the show.
You don't become what you want. You become what you believe you are.
That is it. That's the core thesis we're going to unpack today. We're going to focus really intensely on this idea of the self concept.
Okay, so let's define that. What exactly is the self concept?
Think of it as the comprehensive, really detailed story you hold about yourself. It's the identity you carry around every day, that internal blueprint that dictates all of your acceptable limits.
So it's like a silent dialogue that's just running in the background all the time.
Instantly, making micro decisions every single second.
And what's so radical about this, what the sources really establish, is that this self-concept, it's not just a fluffy feeling like self-esteem, it's much more than that.
Oh, much more. It is literally the underlying software. It's the programming for your reality. It's the master algorithm. And when you look at the different parts of it, you start to see why it has so much power.
So there are components to it.
Yes, typically we talk about three, and knowing them adds a bit of, necessary nuance. First, you've got the self-image.
Okay.
That's how you see yourself right now. It's your descriptive definition. I am a mother, a professional, a good friend, but I struggle with discipline. That's the self-image.
Got it. And the second?
The second is self-esteem. That's the emotional part. It's the evaluation, how you feel about that self-image. So I feel good about my work, but I feel really bad about my lack of discipline.
And the third one must be where we want to go.
Exactly. The ideal self. That's the person you aspire to become.
So the struggle really lives in the gap between those three.
That's where the friction is. If your daily habits, your self-image, don't align with your goals, your ideal self, then that creates negative self-esteem, and you just get stuck. You're in a loop.
And it's not a small thing. When you look at the scope of this programming, it impacts, everything, every measurable part of your life.
Your decisions, your habits, the quality of your relationships, and, ultimately, your level of success.
So our goal for this deep dive is to really dissect the mechanisms, right? How this all works.
We're going to start with the rigid psychology of the brain, this deep drive it has for consistency. Then we'll get into the neurological filtering system.
And then move into the more energetic side of things that the sources bring up.
Exactly. The aim here is to show you, the listener, why changing that fundamental identity, how you truly see yourself, is the single most powerful change you can possibly make. It makes all the external effort feel, almost effortless.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because we have sources that do a beautiful job of blending the hardline psychology of how the brain is wired with more spiritual ideas about energy and attraction.
And it creates this really powerful, really actionable argument for prioritizing identity over just raw effort.
So let's start with the brain. Part one. All right, so we have to start at the absolute bedrock of human function, which is the science of cognitive consistency.
Yes. The reason why simply wanting something so often fails is rooted right there in the very structure of the human brain.
It's just wired for consistency. And this isn't random. It's evolutionary, right?
That's the critical piece of context that's so often missing from these self-help conversations. When you strip everything else away, the brain's #1 priority is survival.
And survival means predictability.
Exactly. For the primitive brain, survival is deeply, deeply tied to predictability. The familiar is safe, even if that familiar state is being unhappy or broke or constantly struggling.
It's a known quantity.
It's a known quantity. Novelty, massive sudden change, that signals danger. It signals instability to the brain.
So when our sources say the brain's primary job is to make sure your actions match your established identity, it's doing that from a survival instinct. It's just trying to keep your internal world safe and predictable.
Which creates what we're calling the psychological iron cage.
And the implication of this wiring, it's profound.
It really is, because if your established self-concept is, inherently negative, if your self-image is that of a loser or a failure or someone who's just perpetually unlucky,
The brain doesn't see a sudden win as a good thing.
it doesn't see it as a good thing or even as a goal. It sees it as a severe contradiction, a contradiction to the established safe self. It senses instability, and that instability has to be corrected.
And correction is just another word for self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm. The brain will actively work against your conscious desire for success if that success doesn't align with the internal identity you've built up over years.
It literally makes you uncomfortable when you start to succeed outside of your own internal standard.
That feeling of discomfort, that's real. That's your brain releasing neurochemicals like cortisol, creating anxiety because you're severely contradicting the established self-concept.
Is that what imposter syndrome is then?
It's essentially that. It's your brain ringing a big alarm bell saying, "Warning, you are moving outside your safe, established identity parameters. Return to consistency immediately."
It's just amazing that our own mind is designed to protect a negative story. The first job, it sounds like, is learning to recognize that that internal voice is just the bodyguard of the old identity. It's not necessarily the voice of truth.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's look at some of the examples of these negative identity statements from our sources, because these are the little whispers that end up becoming chains.
Okay, let's start with a really pervasive one. The girl who struggles.
I think a lot of people can relate to that one.
Oh, for sure. If you carry that identity, your brain will make sure that even when things are going smoothly, you find a way, or even create a way, to struggle.
Why?
Purely to maintain congruence with that core story, to prove it right.
We see this all the time, don't we? You get a promotion, but then suddenly you start a fight with your boss for no reason, or you volunteer for 3 times the workload without asking for help.
Yes. You ensure you are still overwhelmed, because the success felt too easy. It wasn't congruent with the core identity of the struggler. The struggle has to be there, so the brain makes it hard again.
What about the identity, the one who always gets hurt?
With that one, in relationships or even in business negotiations, a person might subconsciously seek out partners or situations that are just covered in red flags.
To reinforce the idea that pain is inevitable for them.
Exactly. They might tolerate poor boundaries, dismiss obvious warnings from friends, or rush into things with people who are clearly unsuitable. It all justifies that internal belief that, sustained happiness just isn't in the cards for them.
And the brain is actively defending the thesis that I am unsafe, because even that pain is a predictable and therefore safe reality.
It's a known pain.
What about the one no one chooses?
That one goes beyond just waiting for external rejection. It actually dictates an internal preemptive withdrawal.
So you take yourself out of the running before anyone else can.
Right. If your brain is operating on the premise that no one will choose you for the job or the relationship or the opportunity, well, why would you even bother applying? Why put yourself forward?
The identity justifies pulling back, and it lets you avoid the painful possibility of actually proving that old story wrong.
And the non-choice becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And then we have the big one, the one that sort of underpins almost all failure, the one who's not good enough.
That one is the master key to self-sabotage. It creates this constant cycle of almost succeeding and then collapse.
How does that play out?
When an opportunity arises to prove their competence, to prove that not good enough identity is false, the brain steps in. The person suddenly starts procrastinating, or they develop a mysterious illness, or they create some huge external distraction.
Anything to back away before they can succeed.
Exactly. The failure isn't proof they weren't good enough. The self-sabotage is proof that their brain is just fiercely loyal to the established narrative.
Okay, so the analysis here is absolutely crucial for anyone listening. If you carry these deeply ingrained identities, your brain will literally sabotage anything that contradicts that story.
You can be working incredibly hard on the outside, pushing for all these external goals, but your internal operating system is fighting you every single step of the way. It's just directing you back toward consistency.
And to be clear, this isn't about a lack of willpower.
Not at all. It is simply that you are running on programming that you haven't consciously looked at or challenged or updated. It's a very intelligent system that's just running on outdated code.
So the way out of this iron cage is to change the identity itself.
That's the work. Once you successfully rewrite that core self-concept moving from I struggle to, say, I succeed effortlessly, the behavior just follows. It becomes effortless because the brain stops fighting you.
It goes from being an iron cage to being a launch pad. It starts seeking consistency with a new positive identity.
But that raises a big question of mechanism, right? How exactly does the brain facilitate this search for consistency in the outside world? It's not just an internal feeling. It's about what we physically notice in our environment.
Right. And that brings us perfectly to part 2, and the brain's filtering mechanism.
Okay, so we've established that the brain is wired for consistency with your identity. Now, we need to talk about the physical structure that actually executes this consistency check day in and day out.
The part that filters reality to match what we already believe.
Yes, we're talking about the Reticular Activating System, or the RAS.
The RAS is fascinating, and it's so much more than just a simple filter. It's located deep in the brainstem, and it's basically the ultimate air traffic controller for your consciousness.
That's a perfect analogy. The world is just bombarding you with gigabytes of sensory data every second. Sights, sounds, smells, temperature, emotional cues from other people.
It's too much. If your conscious mind tried to process all of it, you'd be instantly overwhelmed, paralyzed.
Right. So the RAS solves this problem by acting as a highly personalized filtering system. It filters everything based on one thing: relevance.
And what defines relevance? It's not objective reality, is it?
Not at all. Relevance is defined by your current core beliefs, your emotional state, and crucially for this conversation, your self-concept.
So if the RAS is a search engine, it's constantly scanning the world for proof of what you already believe.
And to give this some real weight, you have to understand the physical connection here. The RAS is linked to the limbic system, which is what manages our emotions and memory.
So the filtering isn't passive. It's driven by the emotional charge you have attached to your core identity.
Precisely. It prioritizes data that confirms your emotional status quo.
So the classic example is, I buy a red car, and suddenly my RAS starts highlighting every red car on the road. That's a simple, low-stakes version of it. But the really powerful application is when the RAS focuses on these deep, ingrained core beliefs about self-worth and opportunity and safety. The filtering isn't just about cars anymore. It's about recognizing potential threats or potential opportunities that are relevant to your self-concept.
And this is where we see beliefs actively shaping perception. And often this leads to what you could call opportunity blindness.
Let's detail the scenarios from the source material because they make this connection absolutely explicit.
Okay, scenario 1. You believe, deep down, that you are unlucky, or that things just rarely work out for you. A classic victim identity.
So what does the RAS do with that instruction?
It programs itself to search for misfortune. Let's say you have a day where 10 positive things happen. You get good feedback, you get a small bonus, you have great interactions.
But then one tiny thing goes wrong.
Yes. One minor, easily solvable inconvenience occurs. A piece of software glitches for 5 minutes. Because your RAS is primed for unluckiness, that one glitch is magnified, it's emphasized, and it gets logged as definitive proof that your belief system is correct.
See? Things always go wrong for me.
Exactly. And the other 9 positive data points, they get filtered out as irrelevant noise, or they get minimized, oh, that was just luck, or that was an anomaly.
So the filtering confirms the story, which strengthens the filter, which makes the belief rock solid. You're trapped.
The external world didn't create the misfortune. Your internal filter prioritized the perception of it.
Now, let's contrast that with scenario 2. You consciously work to believe that you attract love and success and opportunities. You shift your internal identity to one that is capable and deserving and solution-oriented.
Suddenly, the RAS has a new mandate, a positive one. It stops scanning for threats and misfortune, and it starts pulling opportunities to the surface of your awareness.
And the key is, the opportunities were always there.
Always. The right job posting, the supportive person who gives you some unexpected advice, that timely conversation you overhear. But before, your RAS was filtering them out as noise. Now it highlights them as confirmation of your new positive identity.
That makes the chain of causality so clear. This isn't some abstract theory. It's neurological function tied directly to identity.
Yes, and here's the sequence for you to remember. Your beliefs about yourself shape your perception. That's what the RAS lets into your conscious mind. Your perception then shapes your actions, how you react to what you notice. And your actions shape your life, the results you get.
Change that initial belief, and the whole chain shifts.
The beauty of understanding the RAS is that it kind of removes the blame game. You're not failing because the universe hates you. You're failing because your internal filter is set to recognize failure and ignore success. It's just a programming problem.
And that knowledge gives us immense power. It means success doesn't require us to create new opportunities out of thin air. It just requires us to change the filter so we can see the opportunities that are already all around us.
And this takes us from the mechanical world of the brain to the broader context of external reality. If the psychology wires the cage and the neurology filters the proof, then what sets the magnetic direction?
That would be the energetic piece.
Hmm.
So we've spent a good amount of time grounding this whole concept in the physical, right? The brain's drive for consistency, the mechanical filter of the RAS. But now the source material introduces another really powerful layer.
One that bridges psychology with what you might call spiritual physics, the energetic context.
We're shifting from the scientific idea of consistency to the spiritual principle of attraction or resonance.
And the principle here is just foundational. Energetically, you attract what you are, not what you chase.
That distinction feels incredibly important. It really dictates the quality of our effort, doesn't it?
It's everything. Chasing implies need, lack, and externality. You're running after something you don't believe you possess. Being implies a state of internal completion, an internal reality that then dictates the external experience.
So the sources are saying that our internal identity doesn't just inform our brain, it also sets our energetic resonance.
Exactly. When we talk about shifting identity, moving from the one who lacks to the one who is abundant, that is a complete internal realignment.
So how do the sources connect this, this energetic idea with the hard science we were just talking about? Is it just a metaphor, or is it a literal vibration?
It's often presented as a blend, but the sources are really clear that the shift is always internal first. If you want to see it purely psychologically, the energy is the confidence. It's the posture, the relaxed certainty of the person who just knows their success is inevitable.
That's the feeling of being deserving.
Yes, and that internal state is what you unconsciously broadcast through your body language, your tone of voice, your decision-making.
So when you consciously shift into the identity of someone who is confident or loved or capable, your energy just broadcasts that new identity out. You stop coming across as desperate or needy or fearful.
And then life mirrors that new energy back to you. This is why self-concept is presented as the absolute backbone of manifestation.
So if you're chasing a huge goal, like a massive career jump, but your self-image is stuck on, I'm not worthy in scarcity.
The universe doesn't see your desire for the goal. It sees and responds to the scarcity. It mirrors the scarcity back to you, often by creating some kind of self-sabotage that confirms your lack of deservingness.
But if you're vibrating from an identity of prosperity, if your internal thermostat is set high, the universe has to respond to that new reality.
It has to, both energetically and practically. It starts bringing you opportunities that align with that new setting. It's not about effort anymore, it's about resonance.
And this connects the energy concept directly to our practical limits.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a sobering thought, but it's also incredibly empowering once you get it.
Which is, your life will never rise above the standards you hold for yourself internally.
Your self-concept really is an internal thermostat. It sets the maximum acceptable temperature for your reality, especially with money and relationships.
Oh, absolutely. If your self-concept is small, if you believe you're only capable of earning, say, $80,000 a year, or being in a dysfunctional relationship, the moment you exceed those limits, the imposter syndrome just flares up.
We see this with lottery winners, right? They win millions and are broke 6 months later.
Or people who leave one toxic relationship and immediately jump into another one that is structurally identical. The sources would say that person's identity wasn't winner or love, it was struggler with temporary cash, or the one who always gets hurt.
And they sabotage themselves to get back to consistency. The internal thermostat says, this is too hot, cool down.
It's self-limiting, and it's almost protective. We subconsciously refuse to set goals that would make us feel like an imposter because that would violently contradict our established internal identity.
But the flip side of that is the expansion principle.
Right. If your self-concept expands, if you genuinely start seeing yourself as capable of handling massive success or profound love or immense prosperity, your world is forced to expand with it.
The universe, the RAS, your habits, your relationships, they all have to recalibrate to match that new, higher standard you've set internally.
And this is why, as the sources say, this kind of identity work can feel like magic. It's not about working harder on the outside, constantly pushing against resistance.
It's about rewriting your limits from the inside out. When you remove that internal limit, the external effort suddenly feels lighter, almost effortless. The action becomes inspired and aligned instead of forced.
Mm.
Okay, so we've established the why of all this. The brain demands consistency. The energy mirrors identity. So the immediate, obvious next question for anyone listening is, okay, this programming is deep. How do I actually change it?
This is the practical core of the deep dive, and we really need to spend some serious time here. The sources give us a structured 5-step process. It's designed to chip away at the old programming and build a new, powerful self-concept.
And the central mantra here is what?
Repetition, not speed. You're fighting against years of habit. Relentless consistency is the only way forward.
Let's start with step 1. Catch the old story. This, ironically, can be the hardest part because that old story is so loud and familiar, it doesn't sound like a story. It just sounds like facts.
Awareness is the first action, and it requires radical self-honesty. You have to become a ruthless observer of your own internal dialogue, what the sources call your identity statements.
Things like, I'm just bad at saving money, or I always mess up when it matters.
Or even the subconscious ones that drive our actions, like, I don't deserve to rest.
So you have to specifically name these narratives. You can't fight what you can't see.
Right. The sources recommend carrying a small notebook or even using a voice recorder for a week just to capture those negative habitual identity thoughts as they pop up. Only then can you see the pattern of the old programming.
And the action here is immediate interception.
You have to challenge them every single time. Do not let the old story run on autopilot unchallenged. If you hear that inner voice say, you'll fail this job interview, you have to stop and immediately ask, is that an objective fact based on current evidence, or is that just old programming trying to keep me safe and predictable?
You have to introduce that cognitive friction to interrupt the loop. So interception is challenging. But step 2 requires a lot of creativity. Build a new internal image. You can't just stop the old story. You need a powerful, magnetic replacement identity.
Yes. Something the RAS can latch onto and the nervous system can start defending, and this requires meticulous detail.
So we're not just creating a vague, better self.
No, we are defining a character. The source material gives us some key questions for building this new image, and they go way beyond just vague affirmations. You need to ask yourself,
Who are you becoming? What does she or he wear? I mean, clothing affects your posture, your mood. What does she think when she's faced with pressure?
not I failed, but this is important data.
Right. What does she choose every day? Meditation instead of
Yeah.
scrolling? What does she tolerate in her relationships or at work? Only aligned partnerships, not disrespectful boundaries.
And most importantly, what does she embody? Certainty, peace, capability.
That level of detail is what makes the blueprint effective. If your new identity is a successful high performer, you don't just say, I am successful. You detail the specific mindset of that person.
And that detail gives the RAS something concrete to search for. It gives your nervous system a clear definition of what consistency now means.
Okay, step 3 emphasizes behavioral reinforcement. And this is where a lot of people fail, ironically, by trying to do too much too soon.
Yes, the instruction is act in micro ways that match the new identity. The change does not need to be massive or theatrical.
The sources really emphasize the power of tiny, consistent actions.
This is crucial because massive change often triggers the brain's consistency police, that immediate psychological sabotage we talked about earlier. Tiny, aligned actions can bypass that defense mechanism, but they still provide massive identity reinforcement.
Can you give us a concrete example?
Sure, if your new identity is the organized, punctual professional, a massive action would be overhauling your entire office in one weekend.
Which usually leads to burnout and then you give up.
Exactly. The micro action instead is just clearing your desk every night before you leave work. It's small, it's doable, it's consistent.
Or if your new identity is the fit, healthy individual, the micro action isn't running a marathon tomorrow.
No, it's wearing your workout clothes while you work from home, or doing 5 push-ups the moment you get out of bed.
These tiny actions are so important because they create that identity reinforcement. They tell your brain and your RAS, see, the news story, the punctual, organized, healthy one, is the consistent, everyday truth.
And the brain has nothing to fight because the change isn't threatening. It's just a gradual affirmation. The effort shifts from feeling like a painful push to feeling like a natural extension of who you are now.
Which brings us to step 4. Surround yourself with proof of the news story. This is where we take the internal programming and apply it to the external world.
Your world has to support the new narrative. If it doesn't, these external anchors will constantly pull you back to the old identity.
And the sources break this down into 4 key environmental factors. First up is content, what you consume.
hmm If you're trying to adopt the identity of a prosperous innovator, but you spend 3 hours every evening consuming fearful news or gossip or content that's all about lack and limitation,
You're just polluting the source code.
you're feeding the RAS information that supports a narrative of chaos and fear. You have to consciously filter your input to feed your mind information that supports your growth and the vision of your new identity.
The second factor is people, who you spend your time with.
This is a big one. If your primary peer group constantly reinforces your old identity, the one who always struggles or the one who's always cynical, it will be nearly impossible for you to consistently embody the new one. They're constantly reminding you of who you used to be.
You need people who reflect the future you, not the past you.
That's difficult because it often means letting go of old connections, but the sources are clear. If your environment doesn't match your new frequency, you will be dragged back down to the old one.
Okay, third is habits, your daily rituals.
Your habits are just repeated micro actions that confirm your identity. They are not goals in themselves, they are proof of your identity. If you identify as financially responsible, you have a monthly budgeting habit. If you identify as spiritually grounded, you have a daily reflection ritual.
And the fourth factor is environments, your physical spaces.
Right. Is your home or your workspace messy and cluttered, signaling chaos? Or is it organized and inspiring, signaling the identity of the effective, calm, capable person you're becoming?
Your environment is a silent communication to your RAS.
It is. If your physical surroundings contradict your new identity, internal consistency is just impossible to maintain.
And finally, we get to step 5. Hold the vision longer than your fears. This is the endurance test.
Yes, this reinforces the need for patience and persistence. Remember, you are fighting against years, maybe decades, of programming. Self-concept changes through repetition, not speed.
Fear and doubt will come up.
Inevitably. And often, the intensity of the doubt is proportional to the size of the progress you're making. The old identity fights back. You'll hit a plateau and your brain will say, see, I knew I wasn't good enough.
But success comes from just sustaining that belief in the new internal image, holding that vision steady, even when the external world hasn't fully caught up yet.
It's a commitment to the blueprint, regardless of momentary external feedback. The key is to see doubt not as a sign of failure, but as a sign of resistance, a predictable attempt by your nervous system to get back to the comfort of the familiar. You just have to meet that doubt with quiet consistency in your micro actions.
So let's circle all the way back and really reiterate the core distinction we set out to explore here. This entire body of work, it fundamentally challenges the idea that pure effort is the engine of change.
Your reality is not built primarily by intense white-knuckled effort. It's built by identity. We spend so much time on the what do I need to do list.
When the real leverage is the who do I need to be question.
Exactly. When the identity is set, the doing part becomes automatic, it becomes inspired, and often it's actually enjoyable.
If you identify as a healthy person, you don't struggle to go to the gym. The struggle would be skipping the gym because that contradicts your core identity.
If you identify as a financially savvy person, you don't struggle to manage your investments. The struggle would be acting from a place of scarcity or making impulsive decisions.
So the effort shifts. It goes from forcing an action to just managing your alignment.
The struggle isn't gone, it's just redirected. It's redirected toward maintaining consistency with that higher identity, which feels so much more purposeful and less draining than constantly fighting yourself.
This leads us to the most powerful challenge from the sources for anyone listening right now. Show me your self-concept, and I'll show you your future.
That is the ultimate predictive statement, isn't it? Your current life is just a reflection of the story, the emotional state, and the internal filter you are running right now.
And the application of this is so deeply, truly liberating. When you realize you can genuinely shape who you are, that you aren't chained to some old narrative regardless of your past history. That's when the shifts began.
You do not have to stay loyal to the old, small version of yourself. Loyalty is a choice, and you can choose to be loyal to the future self you are building.
That is the moment of freedom. And when this internal programming starts to create external results, when the RAS starts finding opportunities you weren't even looking for, when the energy mirror reflects back love and success, the change feels,
Yeah.
well, it feels almost supernatural.
Like the universe is conspiring on your behalf.